Tonight, here in London, the Mall is at the center of Platinum Jubilee celebrations. As we head into the weekend, the Brits are ready to party. A service to thank the Queen without her present.
We are sorry that you're not here with us this morning, but we are so glad that you are still in the saddle.
The return of the prodigal grandson, how Harry and Meghan were received, and a closer look at the unusual friendship between the Queen and a Prime Minister.
She said, "I thought that you were drunk."
Also tonight, an unprecedented surge in Conservative Party memberships.
This is the largest membership of any political party in Canada ever.
What it says about the voters as the party prepares to pick a leader. My interview with Marvel Studios' first Muslim superhero, Iman Vellani, on the role, representation, and the moment she learned she got the part.
And they were like, "So what, did you like win the lottery or something?" And I was like, "Basically."
This is The National. Good evening, I'm Janella Massa. Ian is away.
And I'm Adrienne Arsenault in London for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. We're on the Mall near Buckingham Palace, where rehearsals are underway for a concert Saturday after what was a day of ceremony and royal watching. Today's main event, the service of Thanksgiving. Notably not there, the Queen herself, who watched from home instead. But most of the other major royals were in attendance, including the controversial couple from California. The Queen is at the very heart of this entire four-day affair, but as Chris Brown shows us today, the spotlight got a bit redirected.
The Jubilee is about celebrating the Queen's long service, but this day was perhaps more about what life will look like after. As her heirs to the throne arrived at St. Paul's Cathedral for a service of Thanksgiving, she was watching on TV from home. The Archbishop of York nodded to the Queen's love of horses in his sermon.
We are sorry that you're not here with us this morning, but we are so glad that you are still in the saddle.
Without the Queen, the most anticipated moment was the reappearance of Prince Harry and his wife Meghan back in the UK from California after more than 2 years. They received mostly cheers, but also a few boos, as they were seated far from Harry's brother, Prince William. Harry and Meghan have made allegations of neglect and racism, which this royal commentator says have hurt Harry's reputation.
People now have a very negative view of both of them. 10 years ago, Harry was easily the most popular person after the Queen, but I'm afraid that goodwill has been evaporating with all the attacks on the monarchy.
On the streets, though, we found revelers sporting Meghan and Harry masks, and others who were more forgiving.
I don't think there's anything wrong with Harry and Meghan, to be honest. They want to live their life privately, and we just have to give them the opportunity.
He's a grandson, he should be here. She is a grandson's wife. Definitely she should be here.
Inspired by her dedication.
Inside St. Paul's, speakers heap praise on the Queen for her devotion to her country and the Commonwealth. Canada's High Commissioner, who attended the service, said any of her personal appearances will now take on added significance.
We're into a conversion period. That's obvious. For the first time, Prince Charles delivered the most recent speech from the throne. That indicates change is in the wind.
The Queen also canceled Saturday's public appearance, but the thank yous and goodbyes will continue with gala performances and parties over the weekend.
So, Chris, as you said, Harry and Meghan had a relatively positive crowd reaction when they arrived, not so Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his wife.
He got a lot of boos. There's been a huge controversy that could lead to a rebellion by his backbench MPs over this report by Sue Gray that found that Johnson and his office staffers rampantly violated their own COVID-19 rules. He got fined and ended up having to even apologize to the Queen for a party at Downing Street just before Prince Philip's funeral.
Bottom line, what's your sense of how this then plays out?
If 15% of his caucus asked for a leadership convention, asked for a vote, they're going to get it. It looked like he might be able to get around this, but it's slowly been eroding his credibility, and literally within hours of all of that coming down, he could be in a big fight for his job.
All right, never boring on your beat. Chris, thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.
Okay, well, from a current prime minister here to a former one at home. For decades, Jean Chretien has had a special relationship with the Queen. And in honor of the Jubilee, he's sharing some of his stories with us.
I had met the royal family 5 times in a year and a half. It's a lot for a French Canadian. So I said, I am the royalist from Quebec, Your Majesty. And she would laugh.
There are some surprises in that conversation and a lot of laughter. We'll have it for you in just a bit. But for now, we'll send things back to you, Janella, in Toronto.
Thanks, Adrian. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is celebrating his landslide re-election, but it seems voters handed it to him with something of a shrug. Last night's voter turnout could be the lowest in Ontario's history. Here's Ellen Morrow on where Ford and the province go from here.
Doug Ford cruised to a second, even larger majority, his campaign fueled by promises of big spending.
Now is the time to unite. Now is the time to build Ontario.
A pledge to build new Toronto area highways, the 413 and Bradford bypass, slammed by environmentalists, supported by drivers. Ford also vowing more hospitals, housing tens of billions in new infrastructure.
We are going to make sure we keep every single promise.
Not likely, say some economists, with Ontario already facing a huge deficit.
Plus, he did some tax cuts. So that's a difficult, square to circle, because you want to spend more, you're taxing less.
Ford's victory was boosted by appealing to blue-collar workers, his economic message resonating as the cost of living skyrockets.
The big blue machine has really turned into the big blue-collar machine. And a lot of those jobs around infrastructure will flow to organized labor and to unions.
In the darkest days of the pandemic, this victory would have seemed unlikely. Fierce criticism forcing this apology in the disastrous third wave.
I know we made a mistake.
Nurses whose pay raises were capped by Ford's government are anxious, says this union leader.
Very disappointed. We're in an awful state right now. I can't express it enough.
Turnout was at historic lows. Just 43% of registered voters cast a ballot, a sign of failure, say some analysts, by opposition leaders.
If you are a leader leading an opposition party, you need to make a strong case for why change is necessary. Otherwise, they're going to choose the status quo.
Ford struck a conciliatory tone, saying he'll govern for all.
I don't care if you're from the red, blue, green, orange party. I'm going to take care of you.
So, Ellen, we definitely know this election had dismal, if not disastrous, results for the opposition parties.
Yeah, just a brutal disappointment for the opposition parties, Janella. Both Andrea Horwath of the NDP and Liberal Stephen Del Duca forced to step down as party leaders because of just how bad these results were. The NDP losing seats, the Liberals failing to regain official party status. There's going to be a whole lot of soul searching going on. Why couldn't they coalesce more voters? Who is going to lead them now? And how are they going to hold this larger Ford majority to account?
All right, CBC's Ellen Morrow in Toronto outside Queen's Park. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Well, anyone hoping to have a say in who becomes the leader of the federal Conservatives had to buy their party membership by today. Only party members can cast a ballot in the September 10th leadership vote. And as Hannah Thibodeau reports, it appears an unprecedented number of people want to do just that.
How many of you are going to get your membership now?
In the final days leading up to the Conservative Party membership cutoff, all 6 candidates were scrambling to sign up supporters on social media and across the country.
So help me change the political debate in our country.
If you are not a member of the party, you have about 52 hours or so to sign up.
Conservatives expect at least 400,000 people will join the party.
And that would mean that this is the largest membership of any political party in Canada ever. I think that people are really motivated right now in this post-pandemic time frame. They're interested in getting engaged in politics and in changing things in Canada.
Erin O'Toole is the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada.
In 2020's leadership race, the Conservatives set a record with 269,000 members.
I declare Justin
as a leader.
When Justin Trudeau won the Liberal leadership, that party had 127,000 registered voters.
There is unprecedented interest in joining the Conservative Party of Canada.
And with the Conservative grassroots swelling, the party has had to increase staff.
One thing that we are doing is expanding the hours of operations for processing and verification, and so making sure that we're working through the evenings and through the weekends.
Leslyn Lewis, the only diverse leadership candidate, is seeing many new faces at events across the country.
Different issues are emerging where people are gravitating towards those individuals who have the courage to talk about those issues. One, vaccine mandates, the travel mandates.
After today, the 6 candidates will switch into persuasion mode, where they try to convince the hundreds of thousands of members to vote for them. You'll start to see more policy revealed, more media interviews. It'll start to look more like a traditional campaign. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
Meanwhile, a Conservative MP has been removed from Parliament Hill over her vaccination status.
So I just walked out and was walking down the hill, and the sergeant at arms, who had met me earlier in the day, was halfway down the hill, and then he escorted me the rest of the way to my car.
The MP from Saskatchewan has not revealed whether she's vaccinated against COVID-19. All individuals in the House of Commons must provide proof that they are fully vaccinated. Well, in an attempt to get a handle on the sexual misconduct crisis in the Canadian Armed Forces, military police have been trying to transfer cases to civilian police on the recommendation of a former Supreme Court justice. But about half of them have been turned away. As Ashley Burke reports, the back and forth is only adding to victims' frustrations.
Michelle Drapeau has fought long and hard for the military to be stripped of its power to investigate sexual offenses.
It's inefficiency, lack of experience, lack of independence.
Now that it could happen, he's concerned by new numbers that show military police tried to transfer 62 sexual offense cases to civilian police forces since last fall, but half were rejected and sent back.
I'm not surprised, very disappointed, but I find the percentage very, very high. And I find this troubling on the going forward.
On Monday, former Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour released a blistering report calling for civilians to exclusively handle these cases, but said there's been pushback.
Civilians have already, surprisingly, in my view, expressed in some cases some reluctance to exercise a jurisdiction that they currently have.
BC's urban mayors writing to the Prime Minister, saying its civilian justice system is currently stretched beyond capacity, and that many of our local RCMP detachments and municipal police departments already have an unmanageable caseload per office. But Arbour has the stats and estimates most provinces and territories could see an increase of about 20 investigations a year and 30 court cases across Canada.
We're talking 30 cases a year across the country. Seriously?
We have made substantive progress.
Defense Minister Anita Anand told the CBC's Rosemary Barton Live, change is happening, but it takes time.
More collaboration and cooperation with the provinces will continue to occur.
Retired Captain Annalise Shamoon hopes it doesn't take long. Her sexual assault case involving a senior officer was prosecuted through civilian court in the past, and she wants the same justice for others.
For myself, going through the civilian system, I had the confidence that there was an objective process, and the people who were involved in both the investigation and the trial were very experienced in sexual assault cases.
So, Ashley, what can be done to speed this up?
Well, Drapeau says it's simple. He wants Parliament to amend a section of the National Defence Act that would ban the forces from being allowed to investigate sexual offences. That's already done for murder and manslaughter. In this case, civilians would be forced to use the jurisdiction they already have to investigate these cases, he says.
So what did Anand say about that idea?
Well, Anand says it's more complicated because built into our board's recommendation is the transfer of sexual harassment cases to the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. And Anand says that she's now asked the military and her department to come up with a path forward.
All right, Ashley Burke in Ottawa, thanks so much. 1 year after the release of the National Action Plan to End Violence Against Indigenous Women, advocates are expressing anger and frustration. They say Ottawa has done next to nothing, but the government insists work is being done.
Here's Rafi Bujkanyan.
This is a national shame, and it is also dangerous.
A year since Ottawa released its plan to end violence against Indigenous women and girls, the reviews are scathing.
The lack of accountability in the past year is staggering and unacceptable.
We're taking a step forward together.
This is the Prime Minister last spring laying out how the government would implement changes recommended in the landmark 2019 Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report.
Your voices are heard.
But since then, violence against Indigenous women has not stopped. 5 killed since last March, 3 of them in Winnipeg just last month. Among them, Tessa Perry. Hilda Anderson-Piers is her aunt.
The government must be accountable for its responsibility.
One mechanism for that, an independent ombudsperson's office to monitor Ottawa's progress in implementing the 231 calls for justice laid out in that 2019 report. It still has not been established.
It feels a bit like an insult. We've said what we've wanted.
Also missing, some say, promised funding for grassroots groups to support Indigenous women.
There's not really a good excuse as to why more concrete action is not taken, other than it's simply not the priority that it should be for the government.
Ottawa says it's doing the work, or trying anyway.
Stripping away layers of colonialism takes time, I know, and we all want to have this done 150 years ago. I can only promise to do my best and keep pushing forward.
The government also says it has earmarked $2.2 billion in the latest budget to tackle housing, healthcare, education, mental wellness, all in a hope to address root causes of violence against Indigenous women. Rafi Bujkanyan, CBC News, Ottawa.
In BC, officials are warning people to be prepared for wildfire season, even after an unusually cold and wet spring.
The prospect of having to deal with fire and floods at the same time is very real.
Forecasters say while cooler temperatures should keep fire hazard low throughout June, weather is expected to take a turn late summer and become warmer than usual. As Canadians usher in the summer season, there's a labor shortage causing some safety concerns. Across the country, there are simply not enough lifeguards. Kayla Hounsel shows us the municipalities scrambling to find solutions.
Many Canadians have an expectation. When they show up at the beach, there will be someone sitting on a tower keeping an eye on the water. This summer, that may not always be the case.
You always feel kind of safer knowing that there's someone there, so I feel like it can make you feel a little uneasy if there's not.
There will be some beaches, I suspect, that will not have supervision that normally have. We're trying to avoid that.
Paul Dion runs the Nova Scotia Lifeguard Service. He's actively recruiting from swim teams.
The cohort that would have been trained the last 2 years, those 15, 16-year-olds have not been trained. We're trying to play catch up now.
It's a rush, it's urgent.
The National Society says there's a shortage of lifeguards across the country. It's also because pools shut down due to the pandemic and staff were let go.
They're in other sectors and they're settled there, and they're not coming back.
In Quebec, they're asking retired lifeguards to return.
If we want kids to enjoy swimming and to learn how to swim, it's up to us to get involved and to make sure that they get trained and properly supervised.
In West Vancouver, they're waiving the $1,000 training fee.
We are desperate to hire more lifeguards.
Everyone agrees closing pools would be unfortunate, but it's difficult to stop people from going to the beach. And that's a real safety issue.
And those 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds that go wandering into the water and they're playing there quietly while mom and dad are watching them, and mom looks down for 30 seconds to check her phone, and all of a sudden that wave has come, and where did that 3-year-old go?
As they scramble to fill the gaps for this summer, lifeguard services are also warning they've lost 2 years of training new recruits, which could mean a shortage for the next couple of years. Kayla Hounsel, CBC News, Queensland, Nova Scotia.
We have a correction to tell you about. On May 24th, we aired a story about a planned soccer friendly between Canada and a team from Iran.
That story contained this photo, which we said was taken in April of this year. It shows the manager of Iran's team, Hamid Estili, with Mahmoud Khazain, who is facing criminal charges in the U.S. Now, that photo was actually taken several years ago, and Mr. Khazain was not facing criminal charges at the time that that photo was taken. Mr. Estili was not the manager of the Iranian team at that time, and CBC News does not know the extent of any relationship between the two men. CBC regrets that error. Ahead on The National, the return of a high school tradition.
We get to celebrate with our friends and celebrate our accomplishments.
After years of pandemic restrictions, grad season is going old school. It's not just students celebrating. Plus, Marvel Studios' first Muslim superhero.
Kamala. What does it feel like?
And the Canadian teen who landed the role.
And they're like, so what, did you like win the lottery or something? And I was like, basically.
First, we'll be back from London with a man who knows the Queen like few others. Chretien shares his favorite stories, including a few shared laughs.
She said, of course, I've been very surprised. I thought that you were drunk.
We're back in 2.
Obviously, she's not here in person, so I brought her in spirit.
It's a disappointment, yes, but we think it's more important that she keeps well.
A lot of love for the Queen in London today, despite her absence from the service of Thanksgiving, part of her Platinum Jubilee weekend. There was no shortage of royalty here, though, with Prince Charles, Prince William, and yes, even Prince Harry and Meghan in attendance. Over her 70 years on the British throne, Queen Elizabeth has met and worked with a lot of world leaders. Not many likely emerge as friends, but sometimes the connection is real, like it is with former Canadian Prime Minister Chretien. He sat down with us for a CBC documentary, and out came the stories of a friendship forged over time.
I met the Queen in 1967. I was a very young mister, and it was quite a moment for me to meet both her and Prince Philip. And she was always speaking French with me. Not always, but most of the time. And I make the joke, do you know why? Because she could not stand my English.
12 prime ministers. Queen Elizabeth has known 12 Canadian prime ministers. Most have come and gone from her life. Not Chretien. He is a stalwart, part of the bond, the French language, and a good laugh.
I had the privilege with Aline to be with them and Prince Charles and Princess Anne 4 days in the Northwest Territories in 1970.
C'est très agréable qu'elle fait toujours le point de parler en français avec moi.
I had met the royal family 5 times in a year and a half. It's a lot for a French Canadian. So I said, I am the royalist from Quebec, Your Majesty. And she would laugh.
To our new constitution.
So at that time, we had a lot of problem with national unity. And she will always been very preoccupied with that and asking me questions about it.
The patriation of the Constitution in 1982. Chretien says there were attempts to drag the Queen into a political position, but she resisted, determined strictly to do just what Canada needed her to do, including being there for the signing. Serious, then momentarily not.
When I signed the Constitution, the new Constitution, the Queen signed first. After that, Trudeau signed, and I took the pen, but the tip was Trudeau had probably pushed too much and he had broken the tip. So when I took the pen, it was not working. And I said something, and I took the other pen and I signed. And when I said the word, she looked like that, and after that I had a big laugh, and people were asking me, what did you say? I said, oh, it's a state secret for years, but eventually I said, merde. And she found it very funny.
Then there was the stress of the referendum in the 90s, perfect bait for a Quebec comedian who dared to dial the palace.
Your Majesty,
I'm really stretched out of these days.
I'm sure you are.
The Canadian political situation is very critical.
Yes.
One day, some comedian in Quebec had called her, and faking that I was the one on the line.
I mean, if I can help, I would be delighted to do anything I can.
Yes.
Do you think you could give me a text of what you'd like me to say?
Sure.
And it was an extremely funny conversation, and poor Majesty, she didn't know how to handle that. So the fact that he had tricked her to the phone, I said to Your Majesty, I'm sorry that somebody has caused you this problem. You must have been surprised. She said, of course I've been very surprised. I thought that you were drunk.
Decades of photos show that easy laugh between them. In his late 90s, Prince Philip urged Chretien to stay in touch when in the UK, as acquaintances with that much history were few and far between. Time marches, and in this moment of the Platinum Jubilee, the Queen's perhaps unlikely friend is full of respect.
She's a woman of duty. That's her duty. And she will remain the monarch until the last day, I'm sure. She can work hard, but she can relax too. And she is a very good human being. And I was always very happy to meet her.
Jean Chretien's stories, just some of the great ones shared with us for our new documentary, The Queen and Canada. You can now see it on GEM, and it airs on CBC television June 5th at 9 p.m. local time. And speaking of those ties between Canada and the Queen, next we're going to take you to Nunavut for a tale of a personal encounter.
I heard her say, "Did you make these?" And my voice left me.
One of the Queen's biggest fans relives that moment and shows us her incredible memorabilia collection. That is next. Welcome back to just outside Buckingham Palace. London is decked out for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Her image this week is now all over the place here, but in one home across the ocean and all the way to Nunavut, that's just the norm. That's just what it's like there every day. Tonight, the homeowner opens up her collection to Juanita Taylor and tells the tale of when she got to meet the Queen in person.
More than 2,600 people live here in Alveat, Nunavut, the territory's southernmost community. Everybody knows everyone. But not many here have seen this.
This is the first piece that I got, one that I got from my sister-in-law, Elizabeth Copeland. And that's my favorite because that's what got me going.
That was in the 80s, and Joy Suluk hasn't stopped collecting since. Joy has hundreds of pieces.
I display some of them behind glass. And some of them I pack away, so they won't get broken, because I don't have room for all of them.
Joy's love for the Queen started here at the Eskimo Point Federal Hostel in 1963, a local day school that was part of Indian residential schools.
We used to sing "God Save the Queen," and there was a picture on the wall in the front of the classroom, and I thought she was the most beautiful person on earth.
The relationship between Indigenous Canadians and the monarchy is a complicated one because of its history in colonizing Indigenous communities. But for Joy, it's about forgiveness.
Things happen in the past, but we can't live in the past.
The love Joy has is for the Queen.
Her strength, her endurance. The Queen is a human like me. She just has a royal seat. I need a person like her to honor.
So when Joy got an opportunity in 1994 to see the Queen 215 kilometers away in Rankin Inlet, she took it.
Ever since I was a little girl, I said, I want to see the Queen with my own eyes. And I saw her with my own eyes right close, and I spoke with her.
A call was put out to artists to display their work for the Queen. Joy brought her quilts, which caught Her Majesty's attention.
I heard her say, "Did you make these?" My voice left me. I actually had pins and needles all over me. Like, the gentleman said, "The royal party would like to buy your quilt and your cushions." And at that moment, I forgot how to speak in English.
And to honor the Queen, Joy keeps collecting. But there is one more collectible she just has to have.
One thing that's coming out for this Jubilee thing is that I think Barbie is making a Queen Barbie, and I want that.
Someday, Joy plans to pass her collection, the largest collection of Queen memorabilia Arvet will ever see, to someone who loves the Queen just as much as her. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Arvet, Nunavut.
So that's it from London for tonight, but the Platinum Jubilee celebration, that's far from over. Tomorrow, the royal family will gather for the Derby at Epsom Downs. That's one of the Queen's favorite events, happening unfortunately without her. That's followed by a night of musical tributes, and yes, maybe you can hear them rehearsing behind us. We'll be here Sunday for the Platinum Jubilee pageant. That is a huge procession that will honor the Queen's 70 years of service, and that iconic Gold State coach will play a part. So all that ahead, but for now, back to you, Janella, in Toronto.
Thanks, Adrian. Next, the Canadian teenager who went from super fan to superhero.
I'm a superhero.
How a high school student from Ontario became Marvel Studios' first Muslim superhero.
What do you think it was about you that made them decide this is the girl with no experience who we're going to put as the lead of this?
I've been asking myself the same question.
We'll talk about the pressures of being first. That's next. Move over, Simu Liu. Another Canadian is ready to shine as a lead character in the biggest comic book to screen franchise in the world. Her name is Iman Vellani. You'll probably know it soon. And with no acting credits to her name, she went from high school to Marvel superhero in the blink of an eye, landing the title role in a new Disney series that premieres next week. And Miss Marvel is like nothing viewers have ever seen before.
Have you ever wanted something so bad, and then it actually happens?
Well, that's exactly what happened to Markham, Ontario's Iman Vellani. Landing the role of Kamala Khan, Marvel Studios' first ever Muslim superhero, was a dream come true for the 19-year-old comic book fangirl. I sat down with her this week ahead of her Toronto red carpet premiere. Congratulations, first of all, to you.
Thank you.
And, you know, it's so interesting because I understand your story kind of mirrors Kamala's a little bit, except for the superpowers part.
No, I mean, Kamala getting her powers and me getting this part kind of go hand in hand, so.
Do you know what you are? I'm a superhero.
Tell me a little bit about how you're feeling about the series finally, you know, debuting in just a couple days.
It's weirdly a weight off my shoulders, but also more weight on them. But no, I'm so excited to be here and to be, you know, screening it in Toronto.
There you go, right here, eyes here.
It feels comfortable being back home and to talk to fellow Canadians and experience this with them. And there's such an incredible pride, and I feel that every time there's a new Canadian actor or actress in the Marvel or in the industry, and so it's nice to be one of them.
Tell me a little bit more about the audition, and what do you think it was about you that made them decide this is the girl with no experience who we're going to put as the lead of this?
I've been asking myself the same question. I don't know. I mean, I felt so close to home with this character, and I had nothing to lose, so I really went all out, and my first screen test was just me absolutely fangirling over the Marvel producers. Anyone who had a Marvel logo on their jacket or on their baseball cap, I was there asking for, asking them to tell me stories from filming Endgame and working with Robert Downey Jr. specifically and all these amazing actors. And so I think they just saw the passion that I had, and I got the part on the last day of high school, which was great.
And getting that call, I saw that featurette where you're on the Zoom.
We would be honored if you would play Kamala Khan for us in the Miss Marvel show. And it was unanimous decision.
Oh my God. Perfect. I can't on my phone right now. I can't comprehend this right now.
What was that like to officially get the news?
So my friends were watching me from their car, and I was on her driveway, and they didn't know I had auditioned. And so Sarah Finn and Krista, our casting directors, text me. They're like, can you get on this call? And I'm like, no, I'm busy. And they were like, get on. We just sent you the link, winky face. And I was like, okay. So I get out, and it's Kevin Feige's face, and I'm like trying not to have a reaction because my friends were watching. That didn't work out. I was like fully freaking out in front of them, and I get back in the car after everything's over, and they were like, so what, did you like win the lottery or something? And I was like, basically. And we got celebratory burritos.
Maybe they're right. I spend too much time in Fantasyland.
That is not you.
It's not really the brown girls from Jersey City who save the world.
This is the first Muslim superhero for Marvel. But not just that, the story really kind of dives into what life is like for a Muslim American teen. It felt so authentic and without, pandering, without kind of, being patronizing. And in the first scene, your brother tells you to say Bismillah before your driver's test. Your mom says there's going to be too much haram at the party, right? So as a Muslim watching, it's nice to just hear those little things that you're familiar with and you grew up with. How did you feel about how the Muslim American experience was kind of portrayed? And did you feel like this is really authentic? Because that's what struck me.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many incredibly talented creatives who have such a deep connection to the source material. And our producer, Sana Amanat, who also co-created the character Miss Marvel, has been on top of everything. And so I very much trust them and trust that they're, doing right by the character. And they would also ask me a lot of the time to just kind of tell my experience of growing up and how I balanced religion in high school and everything. And I'm like, it's not a balance, it's a part of my life. Like, this is the time I wake up, this is the time I go to school, this is the time I pray, this is the time I eat. Like, it was just built in my schedule. It's like an extracurricular, it's being Muslim wasn't my entire life, and that's not Kamala's either. She's at the heart of the character. She's a superhero fanatic who just happens to be Pakistani and Muslim, right? I think that's what real representation is kind of just getting to know a real person and a real character and making them as real and genuine and palpable as possible, because as soon as you start generalizing Muslims, you're representing no one. There's 2 billion of them. Like, it's impossible.
I know what it's like to be a first, to represent a community, to be a first and an only, and that can also be a lot of pressure to feel like you have to do right by them. How do you deal with that?
Well, being the first of anything is scary, but I don't take it to heart. I think the work is going to speak for itself, and I really do think that we've done a good job, and I'm proud of it. And I think right down to the music, we've really nailed the essence of the comics, and that's what was most important for me to because those comics meant the world to me, and they really got me through high school. And I really hope that this show has the same effect on people that the comics did on me.
I wish that you would just focus on your story.
You're Kamala Khan. You want to save the world, then you're going to save the world.
As you get ready to, debut the first couple of episodes, people are going to get to meet you and meet Kamala. What are you most excited for people to see?
Ooh, I am excited for a lot of things. I'm excited for people to see children of immigrant parents who are proud of their culture, because that was something that really hit home for me. I felt very disconnected from being Pakistani and being Muslim growing up. Not to say my parents didn't try. I grew up with all 4 of my grandparents. I watched all the Bollywood movies, but I didn't see the value of it, or I didn't think it was cool. And now working at Marvel and seeing, these creatives who are Muslim and Pakistani or South Asian, and they're so in touch with their culture, made me really go back and, reconnect with my roots. Yeah, we cover a lot in the show, and I hope people can take away something good from it.
This is one of,
many stories that Marvel and other, Hollywood production houses have taken on in terms of, quote unquote, diverse stories. But I think it's kind of showing that these themes and these stories are universal. Do you hope that this will bring more representation into Hollywood?
Yeah, this is barely the beginning. Miss Marvel cannot be the last Muslim superhero, or the last Muslim TV show, or any of that. I just hope this inspires, future generations of filmmakers and artists to kind of tell their stories, because it's important work.
So great to chat with you. Congratulations
Thank
again.
you.
I'm so excited for everyone else to meet Kamala, to meet you, Iman, and wishing you all the best. I think this is just the beginning of a bright career for you.
Thank you.
When we come back, high school grad like it used to be.
Congratulations, class of 2022!
After years of Zoom classes, shutdowns, and canceled events, how this year's high school graduates are taking their celebrations back. We haven't seen a spring like this in 3 years. The preps, the excitement, and the fancy outfits of grad season. Commencement ceremonies and proms are finally back right across the country after a long pandemic pause. And as Paige Parsons reports, teens, parents, and educators couldn't be happier.
An old tradition that the class of 2022 wasn't sure would happen.
These 3 years have not been easy, and then today is like a day that we all deserve, despite all the challenges we faced. So yeah, it's very surreal.
Instead of a convention center, this Edmonton high school opted for a baseball stadium. Parents watching from the bleachers.
We get to celebrate with our friends and celebrate our accomplishments, say goodbye, and thank you to all of the teachers and supporting staff that helped us get here today. And I'm also very excited to give my speech.
As grad returns, so too does demand for venues, hair, makeup, and formal wear.
That's good.
After 2 years of almost non-existent suit rentals, the machines here are going non-stop.
There's just a lot of last-minute stuff, like same day or next day.
Pandemic uncertainty led to last-minute planning. It's hectic, but it's a welcome change.
It's kind of like it used to be, so it's kind of exciting. The parents come in with them and they're picking out stuff and they kind of run through, going through, the style and the fashion.
Graduation celebrations across the country are a welcome reprieve for students who missed dances and after-school clubs and spent a lot of their high school days on Zoom.
It's something that we haven't been able to see in 2 years, which is why it's been so monumental for those who are graduating this year.
In Yellowknife, there's excitement to bring back events like a formal dance this year. But they're planning to keep some changes they made during the pandemic.
So that outdoor ceremony is definitely something as we move forward that we will try to use each and every year. It's great for photos. It's great to be outside in the environment. It's got a beautiful setting, and it's just a venue I think our community loves.
The ceremonial moments are exciting, but for these grads, the real highlight is the chance to finally celebrate together.
Congratulations, class of 2022!
Paige Parsons, CBC News, Edmonton.
Coming up, an intense finale at one of the most prestigious spelling bees in the world.
Bouchal.
Bouchal.
Saccharos.
Saccharos.
Meet the 14-year-old who pulled off an incredible win next. This is 14-year-old Harini Logan from Texas. She won this year's Scripps National Spelling Bee in a historic lightning round spell-off. It was also her final time competing at the Bee, and her impressive win is our moment. A nail-biting finish in this year's Scripps National Spelling Bee, one of the world's most prestigious spelling competitions. It all came down to a spell-off, the first in the competition's history to break a tie between the final two contestants, 14-year-old Harini Logan and 12-year-old Vikram Raju.
Are you ready?
Yes.
They were each given just 90 seconds to spell as many words correctly as possible. Harini breezed through the final round, spelling 22 words correctly.
Nandubay.
Moorhen.
Moorhn.
Beating Vikram by 7 words to win the competition. Her prize, a coveted trophy and a check
for $50,000.
Taking a second to just like let it sink in that while like so many years of hard work and continuous effort has really culminated at this point.
Well, Harini and Vikram both spelled 4 words wrong. That's what led to that spell off. And we should mention this year was the first in-person competition since the pandemic began. Congratulations to Harini. That's it for The National here on June 3rd. Have a good night.